Out the back of that.
I'd like to open the meeting. I'll call for introductions. My name is Tom Crosby from Mabry. We can start down there with Bob and go around.
Hi,
Cynthia, rather.
I'm Cynthia Copeland with Strafford Regional Planning Commission.
Bob Jaffin, Rochester.
Wayne Burton, Durham.
Ann Orphan, Rochester.
Donald Doherty at DOT.
Glenn Davidson, DOT.
Ed Comeau, Brookfield.
Paul Lockwood, New Hampshire DES.
Beverly Curry, UNH.
Sandy Haynes, Rochester.
Marilyn Barton, Strafford Regional Planning Commission.
Maurice Gaffney, Dover.
Brad Nichols, Coast.
O'Connor, Somersworth. Good morning, everybody.
Sarah McGrath, new planning technician intern for the Strafford Regional Planning Commission.
Tom Brown, Strafford Regional Planning Commission.
Chris Shiner, Strafford Regional Planning Commission.
Natasha Lachenko, Strafford Regional Planning Commission.
And Colin Lentz, Strafford Regional Planning Commission.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Just remember to please sign in. Hope everybody signs in this morning. Moving on to number 2, staff communication. Cynthia?
Yes, well, you briefly heard, but I'd like Sarah, Thomas, and Natasha to give a little background about themselves and the projects that they're going to be working on. That would be greatly appreciated.
I'm Natasha Lachenko. I'm the planner here at Srpc. I have a bachelor's in environmental sciences and international affairs and a master's in natural resources, focusing specifically on integrating decision-making and ecosystem science in coastal ecosystems. And the current project that I'm working on here at Srpc is related to performance measures, transportation performance measures.
Tom?
I'm Thomas Brown. I'm originally from Rochester, went to school at UNH. Some of the projects I'll be working on, I'll be working with the UNH Technology Transfer Center on updating some of their statewide asset data exchange system documents and doing some QA/QC work for data already collected. Also, I am working with building permit data and kind of updating previous stuff and updating next year's stuff.
My name is Sarah, and I'm from Alexandria, New Hampshire. I graduated from the University of New Hampshire in 2012 with an environmental conservation degree. And I just started here on Tuesday, so I'm kind of learning the ropes. But I think my main projects will be working with transportation-related projects, and I'm really excited about doing that. We
Thank
do
you.
good by UNH.
Moving on, the draft MPO minutes of September 19th, 2014.
Are you looking for a motion
Do we
to
have
approve,
a
Mr.
motion?
Chair? I'll make that motion.
Yeah.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes, additions, corrections? Not, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And I abstain. Thank you. Moving on to number 4, discussion items. 4.1, transportation alternatives program updates. Colin.
So, as I slowly assimilate the world of transportation, the TAP, or Transportation Alternatives Program, is kind of my first, will probably be our first finished successful project, hopefully. We have 2 projects, one in Somersworth, one in Dover, increasing pedestrian access. Dover's project is about a rail trail, and then Somersworth is kind of downtown revitalization, improving sidewalks for disabled and elderly folks that live in the center of town. And so we are going to meet, we now have a date, October 30th. We're going to sit down with a couple of gentlemen from the Technical Advisory Committee and score those projects using a template, and then our recommendation will be part of the DOT has the final decision on which projects get funded. I think you'll have to check me on the numbers if you know, but I think we have, DOT has something like 15 million and they got 40 plus million in proposals. So they have 15 to distribute and then quite a bit more proposed. So a little competitive, but we got good projects.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Number 2, preparation for new transportation information program. Chris?
We have the update from DOT. We got that this week. So the next step is for us to sit down, call myself, and go through and make sure that the numbers match and nothing got left off. And then we'll go through the approval process.
Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Chris. On 4.3, schedule and timeline of tasks for the upcoming fiscal year by Cynthia.
So at the table that you should have seen, I'll pass these around. If you didn't get one, they're the task list. And so I'm going to go through this, and 2 of them we've already discussed. So the first one is the Transportation Alternatives Program projects. And as Colin said, we have 2 projects that, applications that came in. And so the projects are going to be scored by our MPO in October. And then we're scheduled the first Friday in November. The TAC will be receiving a report on the 2 projects that was prepared by the subcommittee. And then they'll be making a recommendation to the policy committee. And then on the 3rd Friday in November, the policy committee will be receiving the recommendations, and you will be acting on that, approving or changing with edits and approving the scores for the 2 communities, Dover and Rochester, Dover and Somersworth, excuse me. All right, the second one is the 2015-18 Transportation Improvement Program Development and the Long Range Plan Project Update. So we had this as a best case scheduling. So we were still hoping when I developed this a few weeks ago that we would receive the information earlier than we had, and we did not. So I checked with the other MPOs in the state, and they all will be approving their transportation improvement program and long-range plan project updates in December. So this will now be that staff will be developing this in October and November. It will be reviewed by TAC in December, not November. And it will be approved by the policy in December. So that's the deadline for that. So that meeting is the 19th of December. I think that's what we discussed yesterday. So this will now be a 30-day review will happen starting the week of November 19th. So that's now the, it's not the best case, that's what we're going to be doing. The next item is the 2014 annual listing of obligated projects. This is developed by staff and it's due on the December 31st. And this is presented to policy and TAC. There's no action needed. This is the deadline that we'll be working with. So in November, you will be approving the transportation alternatives projects. In December, you will be looking at the annual listing of obligated projects and discussing it, no action. And then you will be taking action on the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, and the Long Range Plan project update. The next item is the 2016-17 budget and scope of work. We work on a 2-year cycle. This will be developed by staff in January through March. It will be reviewed by TAC in March and approved by you, the policy committee, in March. The next one is the 10-year plan project solicitation and project scoring and ranking. This will also be developed by staff in January through March, reviewed by TAC in April, and approved by policy in April. So we're breaking that work out so that you have 1 month to look at the budget and scope of work and have discussion about that. And the next month you'll be looking at our projects that we're putting forward for the 10-year plan, the next 10-year plan cycle. The next one is the Park and Ride Toolkit pilot study. So we need municipal volunteers to pilot a Park and Ride Toolkit as a demonstration pilot study. Yesterday I dropped by New Durham and talked to the town administrator and asked them if they'd be interested. Our staff will be working with the municipality and residents to create a document. The project starts in January, February, and needs to be completed by June 15th. And I think on a 3 to 4 month time frame with regularly scheduled meetings, that this could easily get done. So we will be sending out letters to communities that we know in the past who have shown interest in having a park and ride. And right now, to my knowledge, that is New Durham, Farmington, and Milton. So if anybody else knows of another community or your community that would be interested in looking at working on a process that helps you evaluate the development of a park and ride in your community and the type of park and ride and the location, this would be the time to volunteer. So Barrington?
Barrington, probably, we had one in.
Yes, you did.
It's
Okay, all right, good, thank you. So now we have 4 candidates, so. And then if you flip this over to the other side, this is ongoing projects. So Natasha's going to be talking about performance measures. We started work on this in October and we'll be doing this through June. This is now a requirement of the federal enabling legislation for surface highway, and we'll be receiving feedback from DOT, Federal Highways, and Federal Transit. And we're also working with Southern Maine and Rockingham Planning Commission, the 2 MPOs that border us, and we'll be bringing these to your TAC and to you, the policy board, throughout the year. The next area is the public participation plan, and Shana Silvio will be looking at establishing a citizens advisory committee. So we'll be coming to you to solicit for members, hold an inaugural event, and then have the group work on creating their goals and actions and becoming a functioning group. The next one is the Metropolitan Plan updates with a 30-day public review. So this is going to be a major workload. That's why we have so many people here working on this. It's going to be developed by staff October through June. It'll be reviewed at TAC and the policy as the sections are completed in draft format, and then we'll establish a process for adoption by policy. We haven't done that yet. We haven't established the process, but we will be coming back to you to let you know and seek comments on that. The next one is the Transportation Alternatives Program, and I won't say anything because when I did this at TAC, I did all the talking that Colin was going to do. But needless to say, we're working on 3 of these, And finally, again, as you know, as soon as we pass the new, I forget the years, 2015 through 18 Transportation Improvement Program, we'll be amending it. And DOT, I've heard, has already got projects lined up to go into the First Amendment. And then every month we do monthly minors. So these are developed and processed by staff when needed, or the minors are done on a monthly basis. So the major amendments are reviewed by TAC and they recommend to the policy committee for your approval. So that just gives you a general outline of the amount of work we're going to be doing this year. And as you can see, it's from January through June. It's a very large workload, and that's why we have so many staff as we do have to help get these projects completed. And we have sufficient funding in our budget to do this. So are there any comments or questions?
I was actually going to bring this up under other business, but since it's part of this agenda, I'm wondering if I might ask Glenn, last month at our meeting, we talked a little bit about the minor revision process. Yeah. And I think you had just been thrown into that responsibility, and so I appreciated your responsiveness to our concerns, and I just wanted to check and see whether or not you've had a chance to do any more thinking about that, or if there was any kind of an update in terms of how that process might be made a little bit more transparent to those of us who are actually being asked to vote on it.
Right. The question came last time is, in the past, I guess, in the STIP, in the amendments, we kind of gave a reason why the project was in the STIP and amendment, and that seemed to go away. So I started asking on DOT, how was that developed and where did it go? And it turned out that was put in there more or less by the people developing the STIP, based on their institutional knowledge, basically best guess, and just kind of remembering and trying to put a sentence or two in there. And then the reason they stopped because it was a lot of work for them, and we had change of hands, new people coming in, so that they were less familiar with the whole process and project. So they really couldn't basically articulate what the change was. And really a lot of times it's just more of an educated guess. So I started talking with our people and trying to figure out ways that maybe we can make that more, not an educated guess, but come up with like a list of reasons why. You know, was it moved because of fiscal constraint? Was it moved because of delays in project? Or why did it make the STIP? What happened to that project? And trying to maybe capture that more at the project management level. And we're trying to find where in the process we can best capture that without burdening the staff to fill that in. So we are talking about it. I don't know the answer right now, but it's a great idea, because I guess if I was trying to prove that STIP, I would want to know that answer. But I think it's probably good for a lot of people in the department. So we're just trying to figure where's the best place to collect that information, and what's the best people to actually give that to us. So we are working on it. We didn't forget about it, but it's probably going to come, right now we're trying to focus on the STIP. Cynthia said that we're kind of behind schedule there because we are down 1 to 2 staff members in that area, and we do have it kind of new, so we're kind of feeling our way through it. So I'm not going to forget about it, and I'm sure Ken can remind me often. And that's and I do appreciate that, though. I mean, I really do, because we get busy and we forget about things, but that's something I think I'd like to get back in there eventually.
Thank you. So I'd like the record to show, I sincerely appreciate Glenn's willingness to take on that, trying to make that change in terms of how the process works. I also understand that it doesn't happen overnight, and that each time we're both at a meeting, we'll be talking about it.
Perfect.
Can you say more about the Citizens Advisory Committee, what if they're going to be representative, or what's it going to do, that sort of thing? We seem to have an easier time developing groups of critics than foes, so getting people involved is important.
Yes, so we're being strongly urged by federal transit in particular that we need to involve more of the population that is constrained by their ability to be mobile and to have access to facilities, services, and job. So I think, Brad, I'm looking over at you, but the Citizens Advisory Committee will probably most likely go directly over to RAD and talk about what efforts they've done, and then look at who's out there that we know. We're in a building where there's a lot of regional and community-wide groups that meet here, and we've made, relationships with them, so we'll be going to them and talking about, is there someone within that group that has a particular interest or an issue with transportation, and so that we can get some folks that are dealing with it on a day-to-day basis that can give us really good input as to what we're not addressing and what we haven't thought about. And so that's particularly what it is.
Primarily aimed at the community, people of this
It's aimed at the folks who, traditionally, it's aimed at the folks who have the hardest time otherwise accessing our transportation networks, whatever they may be. Certainly that can be economic-based, that can be based on a disability, a functional limitation, it can be based on language barriers, it can be based on any number of things. So the idea of setting up citizens advisory committees is that it's another way to kind of further reach out into the community and ask those questions or educate so that we can solicit greater feedback, greater input from those groups that may otherwise not traditionally participate because disenfranchisement, lack of access, you name it. And so this is a way that the federal government, whether it be federal highway, federal transit, or any of the other DOT agencies, are encouraging us all to further engage.
Thank you. Brad, just to follow up on that, I think it's important to acknowledge how challenging that is. I mean, we have a meeting here, for example, and we expect that if somebody's interested, they will come to us. In this particular case, we're attempting to find out why people can't come to us, which means that we've got to find ways of going to them as opposed to waiting for them to come to us. And my sense is that that's the kind of thing that can be very challenging. If there's a language barrier, if there's an accessibility, functional barrier, those kinds of things, how do you find those people and how do you get that kind of input?
Sometimes the membership of the CAC might be folks involved in groups that do outreach to those communities, and then you can work with those folks on how the CAC can then work at you're developing those relationships so that you then can get out into those communities, those events, etc., where you can do more outreach. The Jakarta Fair in Somersworth, perfect example. We've participated in that so that we can reach out to that community, and we've seen positive benefits of that. So. But my understanding was the FPOs. The MPO's CAC, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not limited to coast.
Listening to this, I'm concerned that we make sure that this becomes community outreach, not outreach to other organizations. I can see them as conduits, but I don't want to see community outreach consisting of representatives of 17 different groups rather than real people. Listening to the discussion here, I think we need to be very careful to use those advocacy groups as conduits, not as sources.
Right, correct.
That's actually what we had in our plan.
Any further questions?
Well, having worked with groups like this, it is important to have a training component to it, an encouragement component. There's a reason why some people don't participate. It's intimidating for whatever reason. And recruitment of people to be to service on these, I think this has to be, you can't just try to get people and then leave them. I think I think it's a good effort. It sounds like a great idea.
Yes, I appreciate that. We'll make sure that we address training and how we're going to do the recruitment.
Any further comments, questions? We we'll move on to 4, Scenic Byways update. Colin?
Yep, so that's another project that's slowly cranking back as I take on the different tasks that Mark was more proficient at. So we have new people, as you saw, and everyone's expressed interest in joining the Scenic Byways effort. So we've got the Mill Scenic Byway that runs up through Madbury, Durham, up to Somersworth, I believe, and then the Branch River, which is primarily in Milton and Wakefield. And then we're loosely involved, even though Southern takes the lead on the Lamprey River, the lower Lamprey River scenic byway. So those are our 3 scenic byways that we're involved with, and those are just kind of getting up and running.
Any questions?
Colin, one of the things we've talked about before is the desire to sort of get the biggest bang for the buck that we possibly can. And so while there's clearly a reason to pay attention to these kinds of issues in terms of preserving our heritage and the historic nature of all of those things, it's also a really strong or an important economic driver in terms of why people might come to New Hampshire. And so I guess my request to you is to continue sort of that effort to make sure that as you're thinking about the work that you're doing here, thinking about ways in which the product that comes from that effort can be used in multiple ways. So for example, making sure that there are good links on a variety of websites to these corridors so that if somebody is thinking they're coming to New Hampshire, they're going to visit, they're going to be staying someplace in that vicinity, that it's going to be easy for them to find and say, okay, here's something that we might want to do. So just please keep that piece in mind so that it's not only doing kind of what the core purpose of the Scenic Byways is, but is also can be used effectively from an economic development marketing perspective.
I agree with you, yeah.
Thank you.
For the DOT, back in April, Mr. Jameson came before the TAC committee and gave a presentation on the fact the Scenic Byway is also one of his programs that he oversees, is that correct?
I don't believe so. I believe William Rose is overseeing the Scenic Byways. Yeah, it's a different person.
Will he be coming back, or who would...
We can definitely invite William Rose, the spearhead, to come and talk to you about those. If you'd like the program and from the DOT perspective, we can make that happen.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
All right.
I just would, yeah, I would like to add that on the Branch River, they had a first meeting that Kyle Comeau attended a couple of weeks ago, and they have another meeting scheduled, and that is very much focused on tourism, not as a destination, but as sort of a byproduct of people moving through to a destination, and also using the Route 16 corridor study that looked at tourism along that corridor. So they'll be meeting again. So they're moving right along, and it is focused on economic development as tourism in the region.
In that regard, the town of Durham has a wonderful site sale. It's our old town hall, sitting on the corner of 108 New Market Road. We make a wonderful site for something useful. The RFP is going out once we can agree on it. And I was just thinking that's we should add that to the ad, but it is on the scenic. I think it's right on the scenic byway.
It is on the scenic highway, yes,
It's not particularly scenic at the moment, but we're hoping someone will
Is that
fix it up.
because of the lack of business before city council?
Pardon me?
That's because of the lack of business before council?
I'm not sure.
That your meetings, that you're having, your selectmen?
Oh, no, we built a new town hall across the street.
No.
So
Humor.
the old town hall,
Humor.
yeah, it was going to, something, and it's in the historic district and so forth, so we're hoping to sell it because we're using those funds to pay for the new town hall. We think, or else we're going to get run out of town, one or the other.
Cynthia, when is that meeting that you just mentioned?
I'm gonna.
When and where?
I'm gonna go check. I wanted to announce to people. I'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
Any
Hopefully
further,
it's in my big in here.
any further questions, comments? Well, waiting for Cynthia.
Maureen, we were going to bring up an item that we were talking about.
Under other business.
Under other business.
Hearing none, move on to project updates. Marilyn?
I just wanted to let everybody know that Cynthia, Colin, Chris, and I, we attended a meeting at New Hampshire DOT on Tuesday of this week. We met with Phil Watson and William Rose at DOT and Lee Levine at Federal Highways. And we went there for a review of our Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP, as you hear it. We're about our midway point in that. And I just wanted to let everyone know we had a great discussion concerning performance measures that staff is working on. I'm not going to say any more because I know Natasha is going to be speaking about that here shortly. And it appears we're on track and we're doing well.
Thank you. Then move on to Natasha.
You might have to turn it on again. Whatever.
Technology, wonderful when it works.
I'll just get started. So you may remember a few months ago, Matt Sullivan probably gave you a little presentation on performance measures and on what we were up to as far as that goes. I recently just took over the project, and we have some new people, so just a brief overview of what performance measures are. It's a series of measures that we use to track the performance of the transportation system, regional or state transportation system over time. So currently, we are in the process of actually reviewing and refining our measures and our objectives and strategies. It's kind of a back and forth circular process somewhat. And just as a quick aside, we did begin collaborating with Strafford, New Hampshire, specifically with Rebecca Harris. And so the list of measures that Matt had put together a few months back, she's looking over those right now, just as another opinion. And so as far as Cynthia thought you might enjoy one of these little pictures, as far as refining our objectives and strategies, which is what you need to do if you want to make sure that your measures are useful and that they are used. You want to make sure that they fit within our priorities and within our objectives. And so we're using a series of qualitative methods, coding methods, manual coding, and then using software, mainly Excel at this point, but we might be using some new software potentially in the future as well. And so you can see a picture of our little collage going on there as we're identifying our main themes and topics that our objectives fit within. And we're using those objectives to determine what measures we want to focus on. And next week, we will actually be meeting with some of our staff members to figure out the feasibility of our working list of measures so far. It's not a final list by any means, just a working list. And we're going to pick our staff. I guess primarily I'm going to pick everyone's brains and see what their knowledge is on data sources and how often we can get the data and what's the feasibility of getting the data for specific measures. And so, SMART, I think Levine mentioned to us also just to keep in mind to think of the SMART process for the measures that we want them to be specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, time-bound. And so in a hopefully short period of time, you will be receiving a list of these measures for an overview. So that's that.
Do you want to tell them how many you started with?
Oh, well, we're narrowing down our objectives. We started out with about 170 really specific objectives, and so we've narrowed it down to 83 right now. Our measures will be refined, specifically narrowed down most likely next week. So right now we're not getting rid of any because we want to preserve them and make sure that they fit within our final objectives. But next week we'll definitely narrow down a few measures to just the most feasible ones, the ones that fit our priorities, and the ones that we're able to collect and that people agree on. So that's that for performance measures.
And then we'll be meeting with Rockingham and Southern Maine to work with them on this to coordinate the process.
So that will be on November 5th.
And DOT is invited as well. We'll be sure to invite you.
Yeah, could you, because that's
Yes.
something I'm very interested in, and I really like the idea of using the SMART. And one thing I just want to throw out there is make sure that the data is available and you can do it. I know at DOT we get into performance measures and we find that every time we need to update it, we have to pull a small army of people together and resources and spend 2 or 3 weeks getting it just to report it. And it's great, but that's the best use of time. The idea is that you can get things that are readily available, the data, that can be pulled at a short period of time put together and the measure. Just the lessons learned from
That's
some of the things that
definitely
we
on top
did.
of the list. And next week when we are meeting with the staff, we'll be talking about that. Since I'm fairly new here, and so I don't have a lot of their, all of the little details of the organizational knowledge. I'm hoping that other planners and employees here at the SRPC can help me out with that.
Great.
Yeah, and we'll be bringing over to the committee for the review, but we just wanted to make sure that we can clean it up a little bit before we just give you a gigantic list of measures that may or may not be feasible. So.
Yeah, 83 would be a lot.
Yeah.
And meaningful measures. That's another important one because you get measures out there that don't really mean a lot to people. You measure it, but you're not getting your bang for the buck. So it's a big chore to do.
Yeah.
That's why we're looking at the objectives first so that we can tie the measures to something specific that what does this actually help us achieve and track.
Right, exactly. What's the outcome?
We actually went through this process with the regional master plan. So Matt worked at the state level with the other state agencies and the 9 regional planning commissions. And so that process, he was very involved with it, and we've learned a lot of lessons, the ones that you're talking about.
Good.
We're bringing that experience forward and making sure we don't repeat the same kind of mistakes again.
Great.
So meeting multiple times with people in the first part of the process is really important.
Great. Glad to hear it.
Any further questions?
Having lived through the accountability here in higher education, I have great sympathy for you. We collect millions of bits of data that never use and a few that are. Could you just give us an example of a measure you find particularly interesting, how you're going to use it, and where it's going to go?
Sure. Well, we have some measures that are, let's see, I guess you can't really see the details here. We have some measures that are more traditionally focused on transportation, such as crash data. And so that measure can be used for kind of an overall safety objective. Then we have some measures that we're also looking at that historically have not been traditionally linked, but as we are finding, transportation also involves public health, and it involves the environment and social equity. And so we're looking at affordability of transportation, we're looking at obesity rates in the region. Well, we're considering those so far. So we're looking at several environmental measures, even measures such as the number of stream restoration or dam removal projects in the area. which is information that's currently available with the DES. And so that could impact transportation infrastructure as well. So those are just a few examples that, I guess, fit within various interdisciplinary paths, but all really relate to transportation.
So like a crash data, you could collect it in such a way that you could identify intersections or roadways that are experiencing higher than acceptable or normal collisions, and that kind of thing, and that would help towns in the region decide which roads need attention first. Is that
DOT collects that information, and they share it with various partners. So we just got a download from them, and it's very specific as to intersection, and there's a fair amount of detail about severity and vehicles involved and so on and so forth. So it would take a little bit of work to figure out, what is acceptable. DOT probably, I assume, has some sort of metric, but I don't know. Glenn, do you want to?
Yeah, we do. We have a whole safety analyst team, but we also our HSAP, Strategic Highway Safety Plan, all has performance measures and crashes, and sometimes just adopting what we have now, we're doing it, so we're all coordinated. Might be a good way of going too. So I give some contact information so we can talk to about that. But yeah, any measures that overlap with DOT, it might be good if we come together with those, so we're not both doing something a little bit different, or we're not both trying to collect data, report data on the same thing, kind of make sure we don't reduce any kind of redundancy there.
with my town council hat on, we get lots of requests from department heads for funding because they're the ones that end up collecting the data. And then I assume that we get a lot of the data from the towns and cities and municipalities. And there's an inconsistent, everyone's got a different system, a different definition, different equipment, and that probably poses some challenges too. But I'm always wary of reporting requirements that increase the cost of the municipalities without the funding to go with it.
That's where the part of the available data comes in, so we don't burden other people.
Project what?
That's why I recommend having the data that's available, and so we don't burden agencies and municipalities to collect data. But if it's the right measure, we've got to put things in place, how to start collecting that data if it's something we should measure.
When it appears to me that in Rochester, the police department collects that, do they in turn send that to your department?
Yeah.
Send it to DOT, or how does that all get meshed together?
It's kind of a process here. I do a lot with the crash data, so I'm aware of this. Basically,
You must know about Estes Road and 202.
Yeah, I do.
It's one big thing.
Nothing wrong with that. The data basically is collected by municipalities typically and state police. That's all that data is funneled into the DMV.
Is that mandatory?
What's that?
Is that mandatory that they do that?
That is mandatory. That is under statute. That data is reported to the DMV. Yep, that's a requirement. It goes to the DMV. They collect it in their database, and then on a periodical basis, about quarterly, we take that data from DOS and we bring it to DOT. Because when they collect it, there's no spatial component to it, really. There's information about it, but it's not spatially located, so it's not mappable. So what we do is we take it from the Department of Safety, and we run it through our GIS processing coding, and now make it mappable data, kind of make it GIS compatible. And then we also have staff that will work on it, that the ones that we can't locate through automated GIS tools, we actually have people go in there and actually read the reports and actually try to figure out the location of those crashes. So then we produce more of a GIS crash location file, and that's what we share out with the region planning commissions. So there's quite the process behind it.
I'm not confident that all happens.
There is, I just keep talking because I love this stuff. You're right. The current method now is not very, very efficient. I mean, towns do it, but again, it is a burden and it is mandated, but it's always a challenge to get that data to DOS. Well, they are working on a new automated process that will allow their new crash record system that DOS is deploying will tie into most municipalities. They're using a third-party vendor. And the idea is that this data now can be shared, is transmitted electronically back and forth, so it's no longer making copies and then putting them in a big envelope and mailing them up. DOS types them back in their system.
Don't all these vehicles have GPS on them anyway? So couldn't they just,
A lot
I
do,
mean,
but not all.
local?
But it still has to get
I
into.
mean, I think the cities do.
Most of the cities do,
Yeah.
and most of it's electronic. But right now, the cities are printing them out in paper, sending a big stack to DOS. They type it in there, and then from there comes the DOT. But right now, we're spearheading, so it's coming up with a uniform electronic crash data criteria that now will be used by municipality and state police, and now so the data will now be shared electronically, so it's no more the paper copying, it'll just be transmitted up to DOS. And hopefully, that's going to really increase the number of crashes. We can really get some better numbers out there. Better crash data, better analysis. And our guys are really, we're looking forward to that. And Department of Safety, state police are implementing that now. It's just going to be time before we get there, but next few years, I think that's going to be reality. We're going to increase, we guess, somewhere 67% better in local crashes. And that data is going to be disseminated back out to municipalities that they're used to. So, a lot of good things happening in that area.
Ken?
The crash data, I mean, that's a fairly analytical sort of piece, and obviously we don't want crashes. How you solve the problem might be more complicated, but I guess my question to you is, does this group get involved in situations where there may be two good things that people want to have happen? So one thing that we might want to have happen is traffic moving smoothly and quickly and efficiently through a particular corridor. So that's a good thing. Our downtown, we also want pedestrians to be able to get a relatively easy access to the stores so they don't feel frightened crossing the street that they're going to get killed. So here we have two good things. We've got a downtown corridor where we want to move traffic as quickly and efficiently as possible, which doesn't seem real consistent with making sure that it's safe and hospitable for pedestrians. So here you have two, at least theoretical measures. How do you balance that? Is that something that comes back to us where or you come to us and say, how do you want to balance these kinds of things? Or is there a standard procedure, best management practice where those things get balanced? How do you deal with those kinds of things where you have two conflicting good things?
Yeah,
probably. So that's, remember we started using the decision lens last year?
Right.
And that's where the decision lens that is the software product or the decisionware 2 that Mark and Dan developed, similar process, same theory. That is where you would start to evaluate those priorities. So you would have, within safety, you would have different weightings and different criteria so that it could score well in that component. And then you'd have throughput capacity or whatever that would be, mobility, that movement of freight goods, that would be another weighting and score. So you could have the same project or the same corridor showing up with different values and you'd be able to interpret that.
Okay. So of those 87 that you've narrowed it down to, are those the kinds of things that, in addition to crash tests?
Yes. So 87 is currently objectives. We're still at a lot more measures than that.
No,
but those are exactly the types of things that we're looking at, and I think it will come down to prioritization, and I guess I'll find out how exactly we will once we do have a set of measures.
It's a policy discussion.
Okay, good. Thank you. What you need
That's how we start doing the sifting and scoring and weighting.
We use a road rage index in Durham.
You take pictures of people and see how anxious they are.
Don't try constricting traffic to increase safety. That was the lesson. People would rather be unsafe than constricted.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be better home. Right.
Live free or die.
Right.
For that matter?
Drive free.
Yeah, they changed the traffic pattern in Durham, didn't they? After John got killed.
Right. And we think now that had we kept the experiment in place, it might have worked, but that flashpoint Because you don't only have to accommodate pedestrians, you have to accommodate bicycles. And skateboarders on roads that were designed in the 19th century for carts and horses, right? And buses.
It's tough. Any other questions, comments? Natasha? Moving on, Tom?
As I said in my introduction, I'm doing a lot of work with the statewide asset data exchange system. The goal of the statewide asset, I'm going to just call it SADES for now. The goal of SADES is kind of to create an efficient system for municipalities and regions to collect asset data, things such as stormwater, sidewalks, guardrails, and the Technology Transfer Center turns these into kind of a statewide document. So data collected in the field can easily be transferred to them and turned into a large unified statewide document that kind of eliminates redundancies and makes it easy for, say, an intern to collect this data in the field rather than taking time from a state agency to do this data collection. One of the primary documents I've been working with is a data collection guide for pedestrian infrastructure, so sidewalks, crosswalks, curb ramps. Mostly what I did was review this document for kind of readability, seeing if I was a starting intern coming here over the summer, working a couple of months, I'd be able to easily understand this and therefore provide more accurate data to the system. Also, I wanted to look at kind of a twofold approach. I feel like this document is primarily supposed to collect information on the current state of the infrastructure and also accessibility, ADA compliance, things along those lines. So checking to make sure that the data we'll be collecting accurately looks at all those aspects. And I submitted my reviews to Greg Jones at the Technology Transfer Center, and the document that he sent back took a lot of these comments into consideration along with the comments of other stakeholders involved. And we are currently trying to set up a system for kind of taking photographic evidence and creating a system that will be followed and go along with that data. And hopefully that will be done soon. We would like to, fingers crossed, try the system before snow hits the ground. Also, I'm doing for the culvert data that was collected, which was very successful over the summer. There's a lot of data points to look at. I'm kind of doing quality analysis and making sure that the data was collected accurately and matches up with the photographs taken for each point.
Comments, questions?
Just a comment, I guess, the SAFE program is really taking off. DOT is now moving that from a pilot to more of a full production, sustainable system, and we're adding actually 6 more assets to it. With T-Square coming up shortly, we're doing a proposal now, but I really want to put a shout out again to Strafford. Cynthia is a big component of driving this forward and getting our Regional Planning Commission involvement, supporting DOT and DES in the culvert collection. So they did a great job supporting it, and I saw some of your comments, and it really helped bring that manual up to another level. So, hats off to these guys for helping out in that program, and it's really taken off. It's really a time and efficiency project.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Tom. Thank you, Tom. And it's on to Cynthia.
I did the park and ride, so I'm going to yield to Shayna.
Okay. I just this week turned in the 2014 Title VI Goals and Accomplishments Report. So I organized it I listed all the goals and objectives as we had established in our Title VI document. And I made an Excel chart that showed what we did this year to accomplish those goals and what we can do moving forward to next year. So I just thought I'd give a couple examples. One of our goals was to reach out to those with limited English proficiency in addition to minorities and groups that we might not normally reach out to in normal outreach events. So one way we could do that, the Dover Adult Learning Center has classes for these populations, English as a second language, so we could do a specific event with that group to reach out to those populations that we might not normally talk to. Another goal that we set was to continually identify and implement ways to improve public input in our process. And a couple strategies we could use to accomplish this goal would be to sign up for emails for other NPOs to kind of get an idea of what they're doing as far as outreach goes. And I set a goal of attending 1 to 5 trainings about outreach and transportation. Could be webinars. I'm going to a training today in Concord about engaging the public through different outreach groups, so I think that will be really helpful. A couple others. One of the goals looked at improving public involvement, and we're setting up a citizens advisory group, and we're going to kind of put out a notice and try to get people involved to meet with us about transportation in the region and try to get input from the public. We did get a lot of input about transportation when we were doing outreach for the regional master plan, but we want to have a specific group that we can bring together to address these issues. And just one last example, one of our goals was to document public involvement, and one way we can do this is through our social media outlets by doing, I made a goal of 2 to 3 blogs a year specifically about transportation and the kind of outreach we're doing, in addition to other blogs and social media posts that we do in general for what the Planning Commission is doing. So we sent that off to Jay Ingenbrock at DOT as part of our yearly update, and we will be putting it up on the website as well, and if anyone wants copies, I can forward that along. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Jay, can I ask you, in terms of the sort of public outreach, that's the theme of several of them that you mentioned there, and public engagement, which is one of the concerns that Wayne had raised, is how difficult it is.
Yeah.
People are busy in their lives, things of that sort.
Right.
And so, could you talk a little bit more? You talked about doing 2 or 3 blogs a year. As far as I know, I've never read a blog. Maybe I did and I didn't know it was a blog, so that just shows how antiquated I am. But I guess my question is there a way not just to put something out there that people have to come to, but is there a way, if you're going to go to all the work to put that information out there for folks who are interested and who read those kinds of things, is there a way to make sure that there's a distribution list to media outlets and other folks who might be interested, so that it's not just passively sitting there waiting for people to come, but it also actively or proactively goes out? Or maybe that happens already, I just don't know.
Yeah, with the blogs, I think what you're saying is true. It's kind of like you make the effort to go and see it, but that was just one strategy. I mean, we do our newsletter and our we do our monthly newsletter and our weekly updates. So.
And good pictures in the newsletter, by the way, are really great. I think there was a picture of all those, the transportation stuff with all the little sheet. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, so maybe sometimes to integrate that, we could, link to the blog in our weekly update or something like that. We put it up on our social media and things of that nature, but we haven't really ever sent out anything about the blog other than when we first started it. So maybe like a refresher, say, we're up here, we have this blog if you want to check it out.
But I'm also thinking that from a news media outlet standpoint, I mean, many, at least of the print media, I don't know about others, but I mean, they do rely on information coming to them as they cut back on the number of reporters and they cover bigger areas. That if there's a way to proactively get that information out to individuals, the reporter who's covering a particular beat, they might pick up on that as being a potentially interesting story, and that's just another way to get information out to the general public.
Yeah, I've never really thought of that. I think that would definitely be a good strategy, and that's something that we could look into.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the suggestion.
What I actually actively do is when Shana sends me updates on, like, this meeting, I will post that not only on the Facebook page for Government Oversight, but it goes on the main page.
Okay,
So
great.
it gets out.
Okay, good.
And then it's also Twittered out in 4 locations. And reporters actually will view my videos to make stories, to create stories. So
Good.
it does help. So we're way ahead of you.
Great.
Thanks.
That's what I want.
Anything further? Comments, questions? You go on.
Glenn, I've been reading in the Boston Globe, which is a scandal sheet that I shouldn't be reading, but apparently there are several states that are, I don't want to say suing the federal government, but refusing to go along with the guidelines on guide rails because of the kinds of deaths that have taken place, because the company that makes guide rails has saved themselves $1 million by only making the crash bar at the end.
The end
Only
terminals, yeah.
3/4 inch thick instead of 1 inch thick or something to that effect. But so is New Hampshire involved in that? Is there any?
At this point, I'm not aware that we're involved in that. I know we are working with Federal Highway and what to do with those end terminals that are maybe deemed unsafe. And we are trying to look at numbers that we have out there and try to figure what our stance is.
I think the ponds are being greased in Washington, that they're saying they're perfectly safe, even though the anecdotal data that's coming in across the country says that they're not.
Yeah, we are involved in discussions, but I'm not aware of
Yeah.
involved in any lawsuits yet, but yeah, we're well aware of the situation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cynthia?
Yes, I just wanted to note that one of the kudos we got at our mid-year budget review and scope of work review was we're the only regional planning commission or MPO in the state that has a full-time communication and outreach specialist. And so Federal Highways was very pleased that we had taken the initiative and had put the funding into having a person full-time dedicated to this effort of education and information.
You get funding for that?
Yes.
Anything else?
Bob, didn't you want to relay some news from
Yep.
recent, yesterday?
Oh, I have a whole bunch of news.
Have we moved to other
You wanna do it
business?
Now, let's wait other business. Anything else on this?
I have other business.
You got,
Other business I have.
okay,
No project.
let's move on to other business.
Yes.
Thank you all, Marilyn, Natasha, Tom, Cynthia. Thank you. Now on other business.
Yeah, I just want to remind people about the regional master plan release schedule, and I know that Ed has been asking me consistently when the regional master plan is going to be available, so that will be December 7th.
Bam. Bob?
Yes, it is.
I'll start with the best news. Everybody should be aware that Train Riders Northeast, the group that led to the eventual creation of the Downeaster, is actively pursuing Brunswick to New York City passenger rail. That's a few years off, but that's now a working program. So that should please quite a few of us, especially since my family's originally from New York City. That's going to be years in the making. And a lot of that's due to all the other rail activity throughout New England. Just so you understand, there's a tremendous amount of rail activity. Somersworth has its Rail Advisory Committee. I'm now on that. Our deputy or our vice chair with Rochester Planning is also on that. They are looking for more people to get on that. That probably will be a spark plug for additional rail up here. Yesterday, we had a meeting of commissioners from multiple MPOs, RPC. Rail was one of the three major issues that was discussed there. I just got clarified for me yesterday, the Tiger grant that was given to Maine and New Hampshire for the Sarah Mildred Long is specifically restricted to the rail work on that bridge. So the impression I'm trying to get across to everybody is that rail has become a hot issue. It is my understanding that the New Hampshire Rail Transit Authority, once it is convinced it's got the basic work completed on the Capital Rail Corridor, would be willing to look at this area of the state as the next area for additional rail efforts. Having said all that, we had an executive committee meeting this morning. I presented some of this. I am suggesting that the Strafford Regional Planning Commission establish a rail working group. I definitely will be on that group. There was some other interest, and we wanted to know who else might be interested. I can tell you from my experiences, having moved 18 or 19 times so far, that successful commuter rail depends on interface to bus systems. So I'm hoping Brad will express at least a pretend interest in being more involved in that area. Really successful commuter rail doesn't happen without buses. It's a critical element.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea of why I addressed Brad, but there are other elements to that. So we are at this point, if I understood the direction from my other commissioners, we really would like to see what other communities or individuals might be willing to get involved in a working rail group, because I see that as this is the right time. I don't know if you're aware, there's something called the hotel train that's coming through the western part of this, or would like to come through the western part of the state. Golden Eagle is absolutely committed with entirely private funding to try and reestablish the old mountain division, i.e. Portland to Montreal. That has impacts for us. Theoretically, we could tie into that. So there are a lot of opportunities. Again, rail doesn't depend on one thing. It depends on many, many things. We're at the point in time where it makes sense to start creating a rail working group. Preferably, if we take the lead as an MPO, we can draw in Southern Maine and Rockingham. And the thing I have heard repeatedly on Tiger grants, absolutely specifically, and that was discussed yesterday amongst the MPOs, favor is given to multi-jurisdiction and multi-state projects by every branch of the executive federal government. So if anybody else is interested, we'd like to get an idea who that might be. I see huge opportunities. And understand, let me give you one last example. Maritime Administration has funded Portland for McAllister to build an articulated tug barge. They already have contracts to do container service from New York City to the ports in New York to Portland. Golden Eagle already is discussing moving product to and from that port now because of containerization. It's time for New Hampshire to get involved in whatever way, shape, or form to take advantage of all the rail work that's being done in the entire region, and that's Vermont, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maine. So that's why I started with the really good news of the passenger traffic, but that's happening because of all these other projects that are going on around us. So anybody who's interested, please feel free to let somebody know. I'm not sure how we want to collect that information at this point, but I suspect I'm going to end up being one of the leads on that, just a guess. Any questions or comments?
I won't lead on it.
You can.
No.
You don't want to become a rail operator too? You don't have enough problems with
That's
bus?
not in our mission.
You can still comment. Anything else? Questions, comments?
Yeah. Not on this topic. I have another one. Did you have another?
No, that's basically it.
Okay. I just wanted to ask a question. At our last meeting, there were some concerns expressed about the Rochester Park and Ride. And I guess I drove out there. I was actually driving my wife's Mini, and I couldn't see any problems from I had the visual sight distance and all the rest. I heard those issues, and then there were some transportation issues. So I couldn't see them, but my question is whether or not the folks who did or do have concerns, whether or not there's been some sort of initiative or communication to make sure that whatever those issues are, that that the appropriate people are aware, and that information can be added so that in future park and ride projects, those issues are avoided. So I just didn't know whether or not people mentioned concerns last time, but I just didn't know whether or not the next step had happened where people were actually meeting to talk about those in more detail.
Is there any follow-up on that?
Okay, I know, Bev, you and Rad had expressed some concerns, so I guess my issue is let's learn from the experience and figure out some way to make sure that whatever those concerns are get communicated effectively to DOT so that can be incorporated into the future design sort of thing.
Yeah, if there is problems, it'd be great to contact DOT and put that in writing somewhere so we can address it. I can follow up on it, but I'm not sure DOT is aware of any issues going on. So really, that feedback from the public would be really helpful to us.
Okay. And I got the impression that there was concern from not just from the operators, but from other levels as well. And I don't remember what that was, but
It's when you go to make a left out of that road, the sight distance to your right, there's a slight hill there.
Correct.
And it's a sight distance issue.
well, and that's interesting because I literally was out there in my wife's Mini. I mean, you're almost sitting on the pavement in that car, and I could see cars coming. So again, it may not, it's not flat. It clearly doesn't give you the distance, but for folks who are coming and going on a regular basis, you can't, it's not as good as it would be nice to have it, but I don't know that it reaches to the level of being hazardous. So but my goal is, concerns were raised, I want to make sure there's a way that those concerns get fed into the process so that if there are issues that can be made better or work better, that we're being proactive about that. So, thank you.
I'm not sure it fits in, but the Nova Star that's been running from Portland, Maine to Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, cut its season short for lack of ridership. It used up a $20 million grant, I think, from the province of Nova Scotia. It was supposed to last 5 years. In 1 year, I had to take the last boat last weekend, and they're now talking about basing this in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Now, this is a boat that carries 1,000 people, and they have to house upwards of 200 or 300 vehicles. And so people get a little nervous. The owner of the boat lives in Elliott, Maine, actually. So it's kind of on the horizon what's going to happen with it. I think he's just leveraging, threatening to move, because Yarmouth's whole economy is based on this ferry terminal, which is amazing. And of course, Portland, Maine the same way. But just something on the horizon that could cause a ripple around here. It's not in our plan, fortunately, it's not in our district, but they're going to be grappling with this one, I guess. The fact is, the Port of New Hampshire is tiny. There's no space for much of anything down there. And you put a huge boat in there, it's going to be mayhem.
Anything else?
Go ahead.
This is a different topic, but just to make you aware, Barrington is working on engineering for the Green Hill Road Bridge so that if funding became available, we'd be ready for it. On Monday night, we're having a neighborhood meeting. Going forward, when funding becomes available, we'll have to work with Rochester because and regional planning was very helpful in providing us alternative routes if they chose to close down Green Hill Road to place the bridge. Anyone who knows it, it's basically a single lane bridge and it has about 7,000 cars a day to travel over it. So we have to work on emergency services with Rochester if that bridge happens to be closed down. Eisenbach's River flows underneath it, and it's in our northern side near Rochester. Also, we had a visit from FEMA. Regional Planning helped us when we put together a grant application for a culvert replacement on Young Road. The visit went very well. And Beth Pat from Emergency Services up there in Concord feels that funding should be available for us to start construction in the spring. It has to go to governor and council and whatnot once FEMA down in Boston makes their final determination. But it was a couple $100,000 grant for a culvert that we've had the road washout numerous times in the last 10 years. So really hope everything came out.
Anything else?
Different topic. I'd like to introduce Donald Doherty. He's new to our GIS section here at DOT. And the reason I want to introduce him today because he's a great, will be a great GIS resource. He just graduated Syracuse University in May, and we just brought him on board about a week and a half ago. A week ago, right?
2 weeks.
2 weeks ago. Wow. That's right, you're getting paid soon. He's very happy. 2 weeks ago, and especially when we talk about the SAVE program, I like to get involved with the DOT side on that, and also when we talk about performance measures, that takes data, and if that data that DOT can help support or be a resource to get to you, like the crash, we can make Donald available to you. So we just want to put a name in the face, and we'll make him available as a resource in GIS to support performance measures and all the other initiatives you guys do. So
We will be more than happy to use them.
please do, and I'm sure we're looking forward to you. It's kind of a sharing. Don't get me wrong. We support them, but you guys definitely support us too. So it's a give and take, and it's a good partnership.
Thank you.
I have one more. I just have one more thing. I'll put my Dover hat back on. Just be aware of the Silver Street
reconstruction project is well underway, and it would serve you all well to avoid the area between now and I think when it shuts down for the winter in the middle of November, because the back is unbelievable.
Building on something Marcia said, about 3 or 4 years ago at the New Hampshire Annual Preparedness Conference, which is basically run between Health and Human Services and Safety, we could not get enough people to apply for FEMA money.
It's been a pretty easy process. I mean, we did hire an engineering firm also to help us out with it, but not nearly as cumbersome as I thought it would be.
If your county has had a presidentially declared disaster, you have X amount of time from that disaster to apply for different monies than most of you are used to talking about. That is something you really need, and given how nasty last winter was, and what they're talking about for this winter, keep that in mind. If we reach the point where we have an event that's declared, if your infrastructure suffered or contributed to the lack of response, you have an opportunity to use some FEMA funding.
And in our case, this didn't even fail during, it was one of the hurricanes, and I don't know if it was Sandy or whatever, I don't know. But it actually, more of the damage occurred in the western part of the state. But historically, this was a culvert that's undersized and continuously, and by all means, document. I think that the cities have been better at it because they have the staff. But the small towns, every time you have a culvert, a road washout, take pictures, write a narrative, document it, because when you go back to file for any of these fundings, which is 75%, they're going to want that documentation. And the more documentation you have, the easier it is.
There is a certain amount of expertise on staff here as well, for those towns who do not have all the resources to do that. If you even think it might be, again, you have a planning commission here, use us. I hate to say that because I don't want to build work on one hand, but on the other hand, appreciate the assets you do have here.
Well, this came out of the culvert assessment. Right.
Well, I mean, we have a road agent who's been working for the town for 35 years. He can tell you where every color is and everything, but we use some of the data from it. We actually had to do an affidavit because in a small town like Barrington, which has a highway department of about 8, when you've lost multiple roads, you're putting the roads back together. You're not worried about taking pictures and whatnot. But I had to go back so far as to try and find newspaper articles and whatnot, and that said what roads were closed down. So that's why I'm saying you can document it now. It makes it a lot easier. But Beth Peck and the group up in Concord were wonderful to work with.
The 2006 floods, theoretically, had we known what we know now, Rochester probably could have gone quite a bit better. Because I know there were a number of road issues in Rochester that, again, give you guys real-world examples of where and how.
Yeah, and this culvert hasn't overflowed now for, I don't know, the last time, maybe 2010. But it was still eligible because it had multiple events over a period of 10 years.
Anything else? Good. On the 25th of September, at the evening commissioners meeting, there was a U.S. flag ceremony and dedication. This flag was donated to the Regional Planning Commission by Senator David Waters. Through the efforts of Bob Jaffin, Marilyn Martin, Cynthia Copeland, we now have a American flag that is in the entrance foyer of the main office. So before you leave today, stop in and see the flag that we have gracing the office. Marilyn, Bob, excellent job. Thank you.
Thanks to Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks to you
Thanks
for
for doing it.
head-
You had a lot to do with it.
spearheading that.
Anything else? Ed, did you get your question answered? By Cynthia?
Cynthia, the date?
Date.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. It's going to be next week on Thursday, the 23rd in the evening. I don't have the exact date. And it's going to be at the Tumble Down Cafe again.
Oh, the same place it was last time?
Yeah, yeah.
Bob?
Yeah, I just remembered I missed a critical issue when I talked about rail. Now that I am the Planning Commission's representative to the New Hampshire Rail Transit Authority, I've made it a point to inquire as who can sit on that transit authority. If you have an active rail line running through your town, you're entitled to a seat. Now, there's going to be a change in the structure to qualify for federal funding, but any town that has an active rail running through it is entitled to a seat on the New Hampshire Rail Transit Authority. And I would suggest a number of towns consider finding somebody to put on there. Looking at the tremendous interest in rail, TIGA grants, the recognition that we have serious infrastructure problems, rail is going to be part of that solution, and New Hampshire may be able to play a larger role. Getting on that authority now makes sense. I'm thinking Milton, Somersworth, Rochester, each is entitled to a seat. I just don't know every rail line in every town that it goes through. Durham's already well covered because of UNH and everything else.
From the active, the short line, the OSPI, aggregate short line, anybody, any community that goes through.
Yep.
We got it through Maverick.
Yeah.
Yep. Everyone's entitled. You know, we talked about wanting local control. We need to get people on there now before the restructuring. So I don't know how I missed that. Well, I know now. I didn't put it down as a note.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn, sir? Unless there's something else.
Citizens Forum?
Oh, sorry.
I don't think. I don't see anybody coming forward for Citizens Forum. So I will entertain a motion
To adjourn?
to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all for being here.
Welcome aboard. Looks like we're going to use and abuse you, so.
That's what he's here for. That's what he's here for.
Thank you, Len. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but.
No, keep it up.